Hello everyone. Today we're going to be covering a topic from IGCSE Cambridge Biology, the topic of characteristics and classification of living organisms, subtopic characteristics of living organisms. Now, all of us know that there are millions of different types of organisms living on our planet, right? Millions of different species. Now, if we consider all of these species, there are a set of characteristics that are common to all of these living things. And that is what we're going to be discussing under this topic. So, what could these characteristics be? Let's just take a second to think about this. Now, could one characteristic be something like something that all organisms have a brain? Definitely not, right? All organisms do not have a brain. Many animal species do, but all plant species don't. So we can't call it a characteristic common to all living organisms. So let's look at what these characteristics are that are common to all living things. So here we go. The first characteristic that is common to all living things is movement. Now, this is something we all know about, right? All organisms have the ability to move, right? It can be something as obvious as animals moving their limbs to move around, or something, even it could even be something like how plants they gradually move their shoot tips towards light. So movement is something shown by every single organism. So let's take a look at the definition of movement. Here's how we define it. It is an action by an organism or part of an organism causing a change of position or place. So movement could refer to an action where the entire organism moves, or it could even be referring to a scenario where just a part of an organism is moving. So that's movement, and that's our first characteristic that is shown by all living forms. So let's move on to our second characteristic, which is respiration. Now, what is respiration? You know how we as living organisms, we need energy to carry out our essential functions, right? So respiration is the set of chemical reactions that give us this energy. So we get energy through these reactions called respiration. So let's take a look at the definition of respiration. Respiration is the set of chemical reactions that break down the nutrient molecules in living cells to release energy. Respiration is the set of chemical reactions that ultimately release energy from the nutrient molecules. So this is the second characteristic. Respiration is shown by all living forms. So then let's take a look at our third characteristic, which is sensitivity. So to understand this, let's just think about ourselves. Now we have 5 sense organs, right? We have 5 sense organs, and using sense organs, we are able to detect changes that are taking place in our environment, and we are able to give suitable, appropriate responses to them. So that's exactly what sensitivity is. Let's take a look at the definition. It's defined as the ability to detect or sense changes in the environment. And these changes are referred to as stimuli, and to make appropriate responses. So what is sensitivity? Being able to detect or sense changes taking place in our environment and making suitable responses to those changes. And this is the third characteristic. Every organism, every living thing has this characteristic of sensitivity. Now, moving on to the fourth characteristic, which is growth. Growth is something we all know about, right? All living things grow. This could be this could be understood by, we all know that animals grow in size, plants grow in size, even unicellular organisms, even bacteria, fungi, all living things grow, right? So how exactly do we define growth? It is defined as a permanent increase in size and dry mass by an increase in cell number or cell size or both. So there you go. This is how a living thing grows. It grows through an increase in cell number. The number of cells may increase, or it could be the size of a cell increasing, increase in cell size or both. So that's how growth is defined. Then moving on to our next characteristic, which is reproduction. Now, reproduction is also another important characteristic of life. All living things reproduce. They must reproduce, right, to ensure the continuity of their species. So all living organisms, from plants to animals to bacteria, all living things must reproduce. So how do we define reproduction? Reproduction is the process that makes more of the same kind of organism. So reproduction is a very important characteristic of life. So next, let's move on to the next characteristic. This is also something we are all familiar with, the characteristic of excretion. Now, excretion is basically how different organisms remove their wastes, right? Their waste products. So for animals, we remove our wastes through urination, through sweating, through exhaling. And if you think of species such as, if you think of organisms such as plants, they remove their wastes by transpiration, okay? So how exactly do we define waste? I mean, how do we define excretion? It is the removal of toxic materials, the waste products of metabolism, and substances in excess of requirements. Now, you can see that in this definition, excretion is talking about three types of materials. It could be the removal of a toxic material, or it could be a waste product of metabolism, or it could even be a substance that is in excess of requirements, that a substance that is there in excess in an organism's body. So removing these materials is what we refer to as excretion. Now that brings us to the final characteristic of living organisms, which is nutrition. Now, what exactly is nutrition? For animals, nutrition is simply eating, right? And for plants, nutrition refers to how the plants absorb nutrients from the soil or their environment, right? So how do we define nutrition? It is the taking in of nutrients for the purpose of energy or for growth or for tissue repair. So organisms take in nutrients for energy, for growth, or for tissue repair, and that is what we refer to as nutrition. So as student, now all of you must be able to define all these characteristics, as well as you must be able to list all of these characteristics common to all living organisms. So for you to remember all these characteristics, here's an easy acronym for you to remember. Remember Mrs H Gren. Okay, so the M stands for movement, R for respiration, S for sensitivity, H for homeostasis, G for growth, R for reproduction, E for excretion, and N for nutrition. So this gives you an easy way to remember all these characteristics of life. So now that we've discussed all these, the theory, let's just move on to a few questions and let's see if we are able to answer a few questions given on the quiz bank. Okay, so here's our first question. Our first question states that The first question, what is defined as the chemical reactions that break down food molecules in cells to release energy? Now, this is a pretty straightforward question. This is giving us a definition and asking us what definition this is. So the chemical reactions that break down food molecules in cells to release energy. Easy, we've learned this. This is the definition of respiration, right? So this is the answer. That is the answer we should choose. Let's choose the answer, respiration. Right, then let's look at another question. We have this other question here. Okay, so we have this other question here. An organism named Y has the ability to produce its own food, detect as well as respond to the stimuli, and also to remove toxic materials from the body. According to you, what are the other 4 basic processes that must be carried out by the organism Y to remain alive? So let's just take a look at what they've mentioned here. This organism has the ability to produce its own food. Now, what is this talking about? This is talking about nutrition, right? And this organism can detect as well as respond to the stimuli. What is this talking about? This is talking about sensitivity. And this organism also is able to remove toxic materials from the body. So what is this referring to? This is, of course, excretion, right? So they've mentioned about excretion, nutrition, and sensitivity, and they're asking you what the other 4 life processes are. So it should be movement, growth, reproduction, and respiration. So that's all for the questions. I hope you all got a good understanding of this topic.